I thought getting a job at Chuck E. Cheese would be easy. I mean, how hard could it be? A few hours of cleaning tables, helping kids win rigged arcade games, and dancing in a giant rat costume. Simple, right? That's what I thought until I saw the rules. I found the job listing online. Night shift employee needed. Chuck E. Cheese. It wasn't ideal, but I was desperate for money. The listing had very few details, just an address and a request to apply in person. No phone number, no website. Just a single email that never responded. When I arrived, the place looked normal enough, though a little outdated. The classic red and yellow sign flickered slightly, and the parking lot was empty, except for a single black van parked near the dumpsters. I shrugged off the unease and stepped inside. The lobby smelled like pizza grease and cheap plastic. The animatronics stood frozen in their stage positions, their mechanical eyes dark. I heard faint music playing from somewhere in the building. An old Chuck E. Cheese jingle, warped and slow, as if the speakers were failing. A man appeared suddenly from behind the prize counter. He was tall, thin, and wore the standard employee uniform, red polo, black pants, and a name tag that simply read Manager. His face was pale and he looked tired. "You here for the job?" he asked in a flat voice. Yeah, I replied. "Good," he nodded. "Come with me." I expected to be led to a small office for an interview, but instead, he took me through a set of double doors into the kitchen. The deeper we went, the weirder things got. The kitchen smelled stale, like the ovens hadn't been used in a while. The freezer door was covered in deep scratches. And I swear, I saw something move inside when we walked past. The manager finally stopped at a small break room with a flickering fluorescent light. A stack of papers sat on the table, along with an old tape recorder. "Go ahead and read the rules," he said. "You have to agree to them before we proceed." I picked up the top sheet and started reading. The first few rules seemed normal. 1. Clean all tables, counters, and arcade machines before closing. Ensure all animatronics are powered down at the end of your shift. Then things got weird. 3. If you hear knocking from inside the storage room, do not open the door. Do not respond to any child that asks about the other Chuck E. If the ball pit is empty when you arrive for your shift, leave immediately and call the emergency number on the back of this paper. The animatronics should not be moving when powered down. If they are, report it, but do not approach them. Never, under any circumstances, be inside the restaurant when the clock hits 3:33 a.m. I stared at the list, my pulse quickening. This had to be some kind of joke. "What is this?" I asked, forcing a laugh. "Some kind of initiation prank?" The manager didn't smile. "It's company policy," he said. "Sign at the bottom." I hesitated. Every rational part of my brain told me to walk away, but my bank account said otherwise. I needed the job. Swallowing my doubt, I grabbed the pen and signed. "Great," the manager said. "Your shift starts tomorrow, midnight sharp." As I left the building, I had the sinking feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. But it was too late now. I was officially an employee of Chuck E. Cheese, and I had just agreed to follow the craziest rules I had ever seen. I arrived at Chuck E. Cheese a few minutes before midnight. The parking lot was still empty, except for the same black van I'd seen before. The sight of it sent a shiver down my spine, but I told myself it was just some old delivery vehicle. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The smell of pizza grease and old carpet hit me immediately. The lobby was dimly lit, the neon lights from the arcade machines casting strange, flickering shadows on the walls. The animatronics stood eerily still on their stage, their frozen grins stretched unnaturally wide. I glanced at the clock, 11:58 p.m. The manager was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a different employee. A young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that simply read Mia was waiting near the break room door. "You must be the new guy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. "Yeah, I guess so." She handed me a small walkie-talkie. "Keep this on you at all times," she instructed. "Channel 1 is for normal communication. Channel 2 is for emergencies." I frowned. "Emergencies?" She didn't answer. Instead, she shoved a laminated list of rules into my hand. It was the same one I had read the day before, except this time someone had scribbled extra notes in red ink beneath some of the rules. Rule number 3. If you hear knocking from inside the storage room, do not open the door. Ignore any voices. They lie. Rule number 4. Do not respond to any child that asks about the other Chucky. They are not a child. Rule number 6. The animatronics should not be moving when powered down. If they are, report it, but do not approach them. They don't like to be watched. A lump formed in my throat. This is some kind of joke, right? Mia's eyes darted toward the animatronics, then back to me. Just follow the rules, and whatever you do, don't stay past 3:33 a.m. Before I could ask anything else, she turned and walked out the front door, leaving me alone in the dimly lit restaurant. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling and get to work. Cleaning up after a day's worth of screaming kids wasn't fun, but it was straightforward. I wiped down tables, vacuumed the carpet, and picked up stray tickets left behind in the arcade. For the first hour, nothing weird happened. Then, at 1:13 a.m., the knocking started. I was in the kitchen tossing out old pizza slices when I heard it. 3 slow knocks coming from the storage room. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. Ignore it, I told myself. It's just a prank. Someone's messing with you. Then came the voice. "Hey, I know you're out there." The voice was light, almost playful, like a child trying to coax me into a game. "I'm stuck in here. Can you open the door?" I backed away, gripping the walkie-talkie. My fingers trembled as I switched to channel 2. "Mia?" I whispered. "Someone's knocking in the storage room." Static. Then a crackling voice. "Do not open the door." I swallowed hard. "Who's in there?" More static. Then, no one. The knocking stopped. I stood there for a long moment, my body locked in place. Eventually, I forced myself to move, hurrying away from the storage room as fast as I could.
The plan was reckless, dangerous, and possibly suicidal, but it was the only way. That night, Mia and I drove back to Chuck E. Cheese, our hearts pounding in sync with the rumble of the engine. The neon sign flickered weakly as we pulled into the empty parking lot. The place looked the same, yet something about it felt more aware, like it knew why we were here. The shadows beneath the arcade's entrance stretched unnaturally long, twisting like fingers reaching toward us. Mia cut the engine and turned to me, her expression grim. "We do this fast. Get in, spread the gasoline, light it, and get the hell out." I swallowed hard and nodded. There was no turning back now. We forced open the back entrance, the scent of stale pizza and something rotting hitting us immediately. The air inside was thick, heavy, almost suffocating. Every step felt wrong, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Mia handed me a canister of gasoline, her hands shaking as she gripped her own. "We stick together," she whispered, but we both knew there was no guarantee of that. As we moved deeper inside, the arcade machines flickered to life one by one, their screens displaying distorted faces instead of games. The animatronic stage was empty. They weren't there. That should have been a relief, but it only made the dread worse. I unscrewed the gas can and began pouring, my hands slick with sweat. The liquid sloshed onto the grimy floors, soaking into the carpets and pooling around the stage where Chuck E. Cheese and his friends usually stood. Then, a noise, a low metallic grinding sound, like gears struggling to turn. We both froze. The sound was coming from the hallway behind us. Mia grabbed my wrist, eyes wide with terror. "We have to move! Now!" We picked up the pace, dousing everything in gasoline as fast as possible. The lights above flickered violently, casting jagged shadows along the walls. Then the speakers crackled. "Why are you doing this?" The voice wasn't human. It was layered, distorted, crawling under my skin like static from a broken TV. Mia grabbed the matches from her pocket, fumbling to strike one. My pulse hammered as I turned toward the stage, where a new sound had begun, a slow, deliberate clicking. Chuck E. Cheese was crawling out of the tunnel beneath the stage, not walking, not jerking like an animatronic should. He slithered, his limbs bending in ways they shouldn't, his plastic eyes locked onto us with a kind of hunger that wasn't just mechanical. Behind him, the others followed. Jasper, Helen, and Mr. Munch, their bodies twitching unnaturally, moving more like puppets with invisible strings. The smell of rotting meat and burning wires filled the air. Mia struck the match, and in that brief flash of firelight, I saw them clearly. Not just machines, but something inside them. Flesh melded with metal, something organic writhing beneath the plastic fur. Their mouths stretched too wide, revealing rows of human teeth. The missing children. They weren't gone. They had become part of this place. The match fell from Mia's fingers. The gasoline erupted. Flames raced across the floor, licking up the stage, swallowing the tables, and spreading toward the tunnels. The animatronics shrieked, a sound so unnatural, so filled with agony and rage, that it sent an instinctive terror through me. We turned and ran. The fire spread faster than I expected, the heat singeing the back of my neck as we sprinted through the maze of party rooms. Behind us, the walls groaned, the building itself screaming as if something much larger than the animatronics was being burned alive. The front doors were still locked. Mia let out a curse, grabbing a chair and smashing the glass. The second the window shattered, we dove through, hitting the pavement hard. We ran until our lungs burned, stopping only when we reached the other side of the street. Flames consumed the building, thick black smoke curling into the night sky. The once cheerful, neon-lit Chuck E. Cheese sign flickered one last time before bursting into sparks. Sirens howled in the distance, but I barely heard them. My gaze was locked on the inferno, watching as shadows writhed within the flames, twisting and screaming. Then, as the fire raged, something moved in the wreckage. Chuck E. Cheese stood at the entrance, his plastic fur blackened, his body melting. But he didn't fall. He just stood there, watching us, his mouth stretched into a jagged, warped grin. And then he waved. A cold horror gripped my spine. The fire had destroyed the building, but not him. The sirens grew louder, the flashing lights of emergency vehicles reflecting in Mia's wide, terrified eyes. We didn't wait for them. We turned and ran into the night, knowing the truth. We hadn't won. We had only set it free. I rushed to Mia's apartment, practically banging on her door until she let me in. She took one look at my face and sighed. "They won't let you go." My voice cracked. "What do I do?" She bit her lip, thinking. Then finally she said, "We go back." I recoiled. "Are you insane? After everything we saw?" She grabbed my wrist, her expression deadly serious. "If we don't end this, it'll never stop. You'll never be free." I swallowed hard. "End it? How?" Mia hesitated, then whispered, "We have to burn it down." For a long time I said nothing. My mind was screaming that this was crazy, dangerous, illegal. But deep down, I knew Mia was right. This wasn't just about quitting a job anymore. This was survival. And the only way to survive was to destroy whatever was inside that place. I stood frozen in the parking lot, my breath catching in my throat. Chuck E. Cheese was watching me. His plastic grin seemed wider than before, his lifeless eyes somehow filled with something almost aware. Then he moved. Not like a machine, not in the jerky, robotic way the animatronics were programmed to. This was different. Too fluid. Too human. I took a step back. He took a step forward. I turned and ran. The cold night air burned my lungs as I sprinted toward the road. My only thought was getting as far away from that place as possible. But just as I reached the edge of the parking lot, headlights. A car screeched to a halt inches from me. The driver's side door flew open. "Get in!" It was Mia. Without hesitation, I dove into the passenger seat. She gunned the engine, tires squealing as we sped away from the restaurant. I didn't look back. I couldn't. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. My hands were shaking, my pulse erratic. Mia finally broke the silence. "You saw it, didn't you?" I swallowed hard. "What the hell is going on in that place?" She tightened her grip on the steering wheel. "I tried to warn you." I turned to her, my voice rising. "Number no, you gave me a bunch of rules and told me not to ask questions. That thing, it was alive." Mia exhaled sharply, as if she had been dreading this conversation. "It's worse than you think." She didn't take me home. Instead, she drove to an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of town. The fluorescent lights buzzed weakly as we sat in the dim glow of the dashboard. Mia sighed. "You deserve the truth." I leaned forward. "Start talking." She hesitated, then finally spoke. "Chuck E. Cheese is wrong. It's not just a place, it's a trap." I frowned. "A trap for what?" She met my eyes, her expression grim. "For them, the things inside." My stomach twisted. "You mean the animatronics?" She shook her head. "Not just them, the whole building. It's like a magnet. It calls things in, and it doesn't let them leave." I shivered. "But I got out." Mia's expression darkened. "You think you did?" Her words unsettled me, but before I could ask what she meant, she reached into the glove compartment and pulled out an old, yellowed newspaper. She handed it to me. The headline sent a chill through my body. "Missing Children. Case still unsolved. Local Chuck E. Cheese under investigation." My hands tightened around the edges. "This is from 20 years ago," Mia nodded. 5 kids disappeared after a birthday party. No bodies, no leads, just gone. I flipped through the pages, scanning the article. The parents had searched for years, but nothing was ever found. No signs of forced entry, no suspects, only silence. Then my heart nearly stopped. At the bottom of the article was a photo of the missing children. I recognized one of them immediately, the boy from the ball pit. The same pale face, the same wide, empty eyes. I dropped the newspaper as if it burned me. "Number no, that's impossible." Mia rubbed her temples. "They never left." My voice wavered. "What do you mean?" She stared at me, eyes hollow. "They're still there, and they're not alone." A deep unease settled in my chest. "Why are you telling me this?" Mia hesitated. "Because you're part of it now." I felt my stomach drop. "Number no, I quit. I'm never going back there." She shook her head. "It's not that simple." I clenched my fists. "Watch me." But before I could say another word, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown caller. A chill ran down my spine. Slowly, I answered. "Hello?" Silence, then a distorted voice. "You forgot to clock out." The call disconnected. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. Mia grabbed my arm. "You need to listen to me. If they think you're still an employee, they'll come for you." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. The animatronics, the ball pit, the thing in the storage room. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another call. By morning, I was convinced it had all been some horrible nightmare. Until I saw my work uniform. It was lying on my chair, neatly folded, and the Chuck E. Cheese name tag was missing. The tunnels. I had no idea where they led, but I didn't care. The only thing that mattered was getting to them before whatever was chasing me did. I slid across the stage, nearly falling as I reached the trapdoor behind the animatronics. The air smelled damp, rotten. The hinges squealed as I pulled it open, revealing a dark, narrow passage below. Footsteps. Close. No time to think. I climbed down, pulling the hatch shut above me. Darkness. The air was thick with dust, the sound of my breathing echoing through the cramped tunnel. I moved forward blindly, feeling along the cold metal walls. Somewhere above, I heard it. The trap door creaked open. Something was coming down. I crawled faster. The tunnel stretched on forever. My arms ached. My knees scraped against the rough floor. The air was getting colder, and the further I went, the more I felt watched. Then I saw it. A faint red glow ahead. An exit? A way out? I reached for it, and a hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed, kicking wildly. My foot connected with something soft and wrong. The grip loosened just enough for me to yank free, scrambling toward the light. Bursting through the exit, I landed hard on asphalt. I gasped for air, my vision swimming. I was in the parking lot. The van was gone. The restaurant was silent. I stumbled to my feet, still shaking. I had made it. I was alive. But as I turned back to the building, my blood ran cold. In the window, staring right at me, was Chuck E. Cheese. And he was smiling. Darkness swallowed Chuck E. Cheese in an instant. The air turned heavy, like a weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I gripped the edges of the break room table, my knuckles white. The only sound was my own heartbeat, hammering in my ears. Then the breathing started, slow, heavy, right behind me. I wanted to turn around, to see whatever it was, but my body refused to move. My mind screamed at me to follow the rules, to never be inside the restaurant at 3:33 a.m. But it was too late. I was here. And now, so was something else. A scraping sound echoed from the hallway, something sharp dragging across the tile floor. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would pass by. The walkie-talkie crackled to life again. "Don't look." The voice wasn't Mia's, it wasn't the manager's. It was distorted, hollow, like it wasn't meant for human ears. My hands trembled as I clutched the device. "Who are you?" I whispered. Silence. Then, "Run." The light above flickered. For the briefest second, I saw a reflection in the window, a tall, hunched figure standing right behind me. Its arms were long, far too long, reaching toward me with clawed fingers. But before I could react, the light went out completely. I bolted. The hallway was pitch black, but I didn't care. I ran as fast as I could, ignoring the way the air felt thick and wrong. The scraping sound followed me, faster now, keeping pace with my footsteps. I turned a corner, heading for the front door, and slammed into something solid. I hit the floor hard, gasping as pain shot through my ribs. For a moment, I thought I had run into a wall, until I looked up. It was Chuck E. Cheese. The animatronic loomed over me, its plastic eyes staring down, lifeless, yet somehow full of something I couldn't name. I scrambled backward, expecting it to lunge, but it didn't move. It just stood there, frozen in place. Then its mouth opened, not a normal animatronic movement. The metal hinges groaned as if forced apart, revealing a dark, gaping void inside. A deep, guttural clicking sound came from within. Something was inside the suit, something alive. I turned and ran. The arcade was my only option. I weaved between the machines, the flashing lights distorting my vision. My legs ached, but I kept running, searching for any exit, any way out. The emergency doors, locked. The kitchen, too dark. The ball pit. It was the last place I wanted to go after what had happened earlier, but I was out of choices. I dove in, letting the plastic balls swallow me whole. Silence. I lay there, chest heaving, trying to listen. The only sound was the faint hum of the arcade machines. Had I lost it? A sudden weight pressed against my legs. Something beneath me moved. I clamped a hand over my mouth, stifling a scream. The plastic balls shifted, rising and falling like something was breathing underneath. My entire body went cold. A small voice whispered, just inches from my ear. "Why did you come back?" I erupted from the ball pit, scrambling onto the floor. I turned in time to see the balls shifting again, something pushing up from below. A small, pale hand broke through the surface, a child's hand. But the fingers were too long, the nails too sharp. I ran. The manager's office. It was my last hope. If I could find keys, a phone, anything, I might still get out of this nightmare. I threw the door open and slammed it behind me, locking it. The office was small, cluttered with old paperwork and security monitors. My hands shook as I rifled through drawers, searching for the master key. Come on! Come on! A loud bang shook the door. I jumped, knocking over a stack of files. My breath hitched as another bang followed, harder this time. Something wanted in. I grabbed the walkie-talkie. Mia, are you there? Static. Then her voice, panicked, urgent. You have to leave. It's not safe. No shit, I hissed. I can't get out. The doors are locked. More static. Then, the tunnels. I froze. What? The maintenance tunnels, under the stage. It's the only way out. Another bang. The lock snapped. I dropped the walkie-talkie and ran.
At 1:45 a.m., I was restocking the price counter when I heard laughter. Not normal laughter, not the kind you hear from kids during the day. This was distorted, choppy, like an old recording playing on a broken tape. I turned toward the stage. Chuck E. Cheese stood exactly where he had been before, arms frozen in mid-performance, mouth locked in an eerie grin. The laughter grew louder. I felt a cold chill crawl down my spine. Then I saw it. Chuck E.'s head twitched, just slightly, then his hand. I turned away and shut my eyes. They don't like to be watched. The laughter stopped. When I turned back, Chuck E. was still. At 2:30 a.m., the ball pit rules came into play. I was sweeping near the arcade when I realized something was wrong. The ball pit was empty, not a single ball in sight. Panic gripped my chest. I yanked the emergency number from my pocket and dialed. The phone rang once, twice, then, "Leave," a male voice, cold and unfamiliar. Click. My breathing grew ragged. I grabbed my keys and sprinted for the front door. It didn't budge. The door was locked. From the outside, I pounded on it, shouting for help, but the parking lot was empty. No cars, no Mia, just the black van, sitting motionless in the darkness. Then, from behind me, a giggle. I turned. The ball pit was full again. Something was moving underneath. I didn't wait to see what it was. I ran. By 3:15 a.m., I was hiding in the break room. The walkie-talkie crackled. A voice. Not Mia, not the manager, something else. "Why are you still here?" The lights flickered. I clutched the walkie-talkie, my knuckles white. The clock ticked forward. 3:32 a.m. 1 minute to go, then a sound. Slow footsteps. Coming from the hallway. Something was outside the break room. Waiting. I held my breath, praying it would leave. The walkie-talkie crackled again. Run! At exactly 3:33 a.m., the power went out. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me whole was the sound of something breathing behind me.